Hi, I'm John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy, with another Global Real Estate School podcast.
Good afternoon and welcome to the podcast. My name is John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy, and this is episode 086. Hey, I got that right. The last couple of podcasts, I've been trying to think, what number are we on? And for some reason yesterday I said, I think we're in the 90s, but it's 086, I think. Anyway, that's what I'm starting with, and so we'll go with it. 086, episode 086. Today, as promised, I'm going to talk about a contract for deed. Boy, this is where the exam really becomes difficult for so many students because the terminology, there's so many words. There are a lot of words, and I always tell my students, you got to know the definitions. It is so important to know the definitions and the terminology. And a good example is a contract for deed, because a contract for deed can also be labeled or called on the exam as a land contract. Can also be called a vendor's contract, or so we have all these different terminologies. We have contract for deed, a land contract, and you could also call it a vendor's contract. And so you've got to know, what's going on in this land contract or contract for deed. And so there's several players that we need to know about and understand. First of all, the concept behind a land contract or a contract for deed is when the seller finances part of the purchase price or even the full amount, and normally it's a full amount, and then they will give you a deed when you've made all the final payments. As I'm going over this, I think perhaps maybe I've done a podcast on a contract for deed in the past, so you might look back and perhaps get another version of this as well. But if I was a seller, I sold you my home and I agreed to finance it for you, and we did a contract for deed, you have what is called an equitable interest in the property, and I have a legal interest in the property. In other words, if you went to the courthouse, you would find my name on the record as the legal owner of the property. But you have what is called an equitable interest. EQUITABLE, equitable. And that just simply means that you have the right to get legal title when you've paid me all of your payments. Let's think about this for a moment, because it can be very scary for you as a buyer. You give me $5,000 cash as a down payment. I agree to allow you to move into my property on Walnut Street, and I'll finance the other $95,000. So I'm selling you the property for $100,000. You give me $5,000 cash, and I finance $95,000. In other words, you will make me a monthly payment based on $95,000. Now, the problem comes in for you in that if I go to the bank and borrow money against the property, I could go borrow $95,000 cash from the bank. They give me the money. I've already collected $5,000 from you. I quit making payments to the bank, and the bank will do what? Foreclose and take the property back. And now you are out of $5,000 cash and any improvements you've made to the house, and you've got to find a new place to live. Why did this happen? Because it was a contract for deed. You only had an equitable right to get the title. I had the legal title, so I could literally go to the bank and say, I want to borrow money. They go to the courthouse. Yeah, Mayfield owns this property. We'll give him the $95,000. They loan me the money. I take off with the cash, never make any payments to the bank. And they will, of course, foreclose on the mortgage because they have a note and a deed of trust or a mortgage against the property, and they take the property back, and it's all legal because you just had this equitable right of interest. So you have to be really careful on contract for deeds. You need to know who are you working with, who are you dealing with, and you need to try to pay it off ASAP, because bad things can happen. I remember several years ago in a little lake and resort area close by Farmington, Missouri. It was called Rocky Ridge Ranch. It's between St. Genevieve and Farmington, Missouri. You can look it up on that Google. It's a nice little place, but there was a gentleman there who owned a number of properties, sold them contract for deed, then went and borrowed money on the properties and left the area, and the banks foreclosed, and many people lost thousands of dollars. So you have to be very careful on a contract for deed. So here's what you need to know for the exam, okay? You need to get back to it. Hopefully you know the concept now. You need to know that the seller holds legal title, and you need to know the buyer owns or holds equitable. Legal title means there's constructive notice at the courthouse that I'm the owner. Equitable interest is just your right to get the legal title after you've made all the payments. You need to know who a vendor is and who a vendee is. You need to know, who those different types of rights. And it sometimes is called an installment contract. It's sometimes called a land contract. And it's sometimes called a vendor contract. But just remember, contract for deed, I think it's very important for you to understand, seller has the legal title. If you go to the courthouse, you're going to find the seller's name there. The buyer only has an equitable right of title, or the right to get the title legally after they've made all of the payments. Well, as always, thanks for listening to the podcast. I really think I've done a podcast on contract for deed in the past, but that's okay. It's always good to go over the definitions a second or third time. So go back, look, maybe you'll find it there. But hey, check us out at globalrealestateschool.com. We've got some great study aids there. We'd love to have you as a student. And if you're in another state, we don't offer courses in your state, you could still get study aids to help you pass the exam. It's globalrealestateschool.com. I'm John Mayfield. I've had my real estate license since 1978. At the age of 18, I've been teaching pre- and post-licensing since 1987. And I love offering my online real estate school. It's just been a blast. And hope you'll check us out. Hope you will join our school. We would love to have you as a student.
Thank you for listening to the podcast for Global Real Estate School. I'm John Mayfield, the Real Estate Tech Guy. Go out and make it a great day.